Let's see how we can use a really simple technique to help with separation and keep the energy going in this part of the drop.
I want your body, everybody wants your body, so let's check. Let's check.
By the way, this is an edit of Jack by a New York artist named Bishop that I helped on the mixing and mastering side. It's a really cool edit, and I believe it's a free download, so definitely check it out. But I think a lot of times in music production, especially in house or electronic music, there's sometimes a tendency to use complicated production or mixing techniques. And I almost feel like it's like a rite of passage where sometimes we want to use the most complicated technique just so we can show like our producer friends or whatever how much we know about music production or mixing. And I'm not throwing shade. I think that there is definitely a place for complex mixing and production techniques, and they offer very valid solutions. I also think that sometimes the answer can be simplified. So let's jump into this track a little bit and pay attention to the vocal and the pluck. They're fighting for space a little bit.
I want your body, everybody wants your body, so let's check. Let's check.
The pluck sounds okay in this emptier section of the track, but it's really distracting from the vocal in this first section here. So obviously one technique for creating separation is I can work on some EQ stuff and maybe create separation that way. Another solution is maybe I can even grab soothe, throw it on the pluck, and then I can set the vocal as like a sidechain trigger so it's ducking some of the frequencies. Same thing with the FABFILTER Pro Q3, right? Like you can set the vocal as some sort of sidechain trigger where it's like ducking the volume. We could also try some type of chorus plugin or stereo widening to move the pluck a little bit out of the middle and get it out of the way of the vocal that way.
Let's check.
But in this case, I think that's something that worked just as well and was a lot simpler than pulling up Soothe or Pro Q3 or something like that. It's just a simple volume automation with utility. So, you know, in this section here,
I want your body.
where the vocal and the bass are really driving the energy, we don't need the pluck to be as present or as forward, right? Because we already have a couple of elements that are really driving the track. But then in this next 4 bars where that really distorted bass and the vocal drop out, we need something to step up and just keep that momentum going forward. And in this case, we can do that with the pluck. We just have to turn it up a little bit. So I'll just play it without the automation, and then I'll play it with the automation. You can hear the difference.
Body wants your body, so let's check. Let's check.
A little bit flat, but if we turn this on,
Body wants your body, so let's check. Let's check.
and it's not a crazy automation either. It's about 2 decibels, but it really just helps the energy for that section. And I learned this type of thought process from an engineer named Jeff Ellis, who, if you haven't heard of him before, he engineered Frank Ocean's album. He's done a lot of like Doja Cat's recent stuff. And he said that he thinks of a song almost as a performance. And during that performance, elements are going to be coming in and out of the spotlight. So for these first 4 bars, obviously the focus and the spotlight is on that huge bass and the vocals, right? And then in the second 4 bars, it's almost like the spotlight is shifted to the plucks a little bit. And that's really now what we want the listener to focus on. So again, we don't always have to reach for the third-party plugins, even though they're great to apply overly complicated techniques in some cases. Sometimes a simple solution like a volume automation works just as well.